Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant podcast. My name is Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got Rohan. How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
And today we're very excited to welcome Rosemary Orchard to the podcast. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me, you two.
Do you want to actually do the ad read? Do you want to, seeing as you're a fellow podcaster, do you just want the ad read?
I don't have the text. If somebody supplies me with the text, I can do the text.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I love Nabu Casa. This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESP Home projects. Configuration is done via the user interface, so there's no fiddling with YouTube settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
Perfect. There you go. Well, so fellow Home Assistant creator has joined the podcast today. So welcome. Thank you for doing the ad read. Always good to have that done for us. So, Rose, I guess some people know you from, you've got a few different podcasts around. You've just started getting yourself into Home Assistant. Maybe give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then maybe we can start with how you got into home automation and how you come here today to be on the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm a software developer nowadays. I actually did my degree in languages and spent some time wandering the world. And I started, I switched to being a software developer while I was living in Austria. And that's where I really started my home automation journey as well. And I got a lot more into tech there and just generally automating things, especially with the app for iOS, originally called Workflow, which is now shortcuts and built into the operating system. And that was one of the things that I used to learn about how to follow the logic patterns. If you start with this and you transform it and you take these little bits here and then you put them into that, and bam, you end up with something really, really cool or something spectacularly broken, depending on how well or badly you've done it. And yeah, I just was really excited by the idea of HomeKit and being able to control stuff from my iPhone and have things happen automatically. So I started probably the way a lot of people do with some Hue light bulbs. It was great
The
for
gateway
me
drug.
because it was great for me. I had like HomeKit automation set up so that when I got home, lights would turn on if it was dark and stuff like that. Or if I was at home and the sun was going down, then it would turn on the lights. But I set all that up in HomeKit, and of course the other person was using an Android, so that didn't work so well. Yeah, I tried setting up Home Assistant, but I did not read the instructions well, or I did because I set up supervised. And I have to say,
That's good.
I had no idea what I was doing. I set up supervised, and it worked for controlling things, as in like showing stuff up. But I didn't really know what I was doing,
Sure.
and so I never bothered to set up the automations and stuff, and kind of just left it there as a dashboard and forgot about it for a while. And then I moved back to the UK, and yeah, just wanted to start doing a lot more things. So I bought some smart door locks, and they're Yale ones, and we didn't have at that point a Yale HomeKit hub here in the UK. And so I thought, well, how can I get them in? Googled, and of course the answer that came back was Home Assistant and the ZWave stick. And I was like, okay, I can figure this out. Like, I'll do this. So I got another Raspberry Pi. At that point, you could still buy them relatively easily. Threw Home Assistant OS on there, bought a ZWave stick, read the guides that people have put up saying, use an extension lead because that way you're avoiding interference. I think that's more for Zigbee, but I did it for ZWave as well, and set it up and shared my logs back to HomeKit, and it worked. And that was kind of it. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I just started finding more and more things. It's like, I can't do this in HomeKit, but I could do this in Home Assistant. I guess I'll just do it in Home Assistant then.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then I had the pain point of switching from all the HomeKit hubs, like the Akara hub, the IKEA hub and stuff, onto Zigbee directly in Home Assistant. Right. But fortunately, that's done now.
I think that's one of the powerful things when it comes to Home Assistant as well, being able to do the two-way HomeKit. Yeah. I know when I've always assumed that HomeKit was just, all right, we'll just pull in the HomeKit devices, but being able to act as a HomeKit device or controller as well on the network, and then being able to share it down to iOS devices just makes it so that Home Assistant does become that HomeKit bridge for everything, right? And so it unlocks other ecosystems into the Apple land that previously weren't available.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean it's nice because it's available. But like, how do you? I don't know. I'd love to just because you did it all in HomeKit and you kind of redid it all in Home Assistant, how do you compare the two? Like I know Home Assistant can build on top of HomeKit, but how do you? I don't know how to ask it properly, but it's essentially like when you do a apples to oranges, I guess, contrast here.
Yeah.
What's better? What works better, or what doesn't work better?
Yeah, I mean, like an easy comparison for me, and I say this without really watching either of them, is HomeKit is NASCAR, Home Assistant is Formula One. Like it's just got that much more power and everything. But equally, like there's the team of people helping you keep everything going, and that's the community. Now, Home Assistant, HomeKit, of course, has a community as well. It's just there's not so many people out there building things for it and so on. There's Homebridge and people building plugins for Homebridge and so on, but it just doesn't feel the same. I've never like fell into a HomeKit forum with a HomeKit Discord like there is for Home Assistant, and for me, like HomeKit looks really pretty and simple and easy to set up. But if you are trying to do something complicated, and I'm using air quotes on complicated because to me, some of these things shouldn't be that complicated, it gets really difficult. So a simple one is if my door is open, my door is right next to a heater, and it's open for more than a minute, turn off the heating. Like I don't want the heating on. I don't want to be heating the universe. That's not good for the environment. That's not good for my electricity bill, especially right now. And so, I wanted to be able to turn off my heater if my door was open for more than a minute. Well, I couldn't do that in HomeKit. Like there's no, this thing was in this state for this amount of time. Home Assistant, you pop open the Automations UI, or you can do this in YAML if you prefer, and you can just say, "Hey, is this state for this period of time?" And that's it. And then the rest of the automation, and it's very simple to do that. But equally, you have to go through and set things up, and you've suddenly got, oh my gosh, all of these sensors and entities from this device. Like, why do I want like the current voltage from this plug? I just thought it was a smart plug. I just wanted to turn this on and off or whatever it is. And, so it can be a little bit overwhelming with, oh my gosh, there's so much information. But you can put on like sort of blinkers like a horse and just ignore everything else that you don't need right now and just focus on that little bit and remember the rest later if you want to.
Yeah, and that's a lot of building your own dashboards and stuff like that as well, right? That helps with a lot of that. So
definitely,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just on that, are you a YAML or a UI sort of person when it comes to building out your automations?
I wanted to know that too.
Yes. I'm both. Nice. So I tend to start in the UI just because it's really easy to avoid making mistakes. I mean, there is no perfect text format for these things. They could have picked JSON, they could pick YAML, they could pick TOML, they could pick plain text, but all of them are going to be pernickety in one way or another. You missed a closing bracket here, you've accidentally used a tab instead of a space there. And so I tend to start in the UI because a lot of the time I can just accomplish what I want there. But equally, if I want to rearrange some actions, or something, then I will just click 3 dots in top right, switch it to YAML and go. And that works brilliantly. I'm really pleased that it's so easy to use both options, because that was something that I had read that sort of maybe YAML was going away or something. And, I'd read that and I was like, oh no, like I like having plain text. Like I can put it in GitHub so that I can, find absolutely. Everything and search. And other people have got things in GitHub, so I can just copy and paste. And copying and pasting from a screenshot, it doesn't work. And also it's just nice to be able to literally copy and paste and just replace the IDs of something and go from there. But so I use both. And I've got a lot of things configured through YAML, like lots of sensors, like platform sensors and template sensors and stuff like that, which certainly make my life easier.
I was stalking your GitHub repo with your Home Assistant config up there, and same. Like I can just see so many similarities with like my configuration. Like you've got a whole bunch of template sensors, you've got binary sensors that do this. You've actually got some cool things that I like. One of them you're using, I think, a binary sensor to dictate like once like a lower threshold. Once it's like dark enough in a room, then the lights will turn on. So I'm going to pinch that from your config. I thought that was very cool.
So that's actually in there because I'm foolish enough to run the beta.
Not foolish. No. I only run beta.
Same.
Well, I mean, I love the beta, and honestly, like the developers for Home Assistant are super responsive. But they've recently added all these amazing helpers to the UI, which I have to say is such a great idea because so many more people are going to go and try these things out. And you'll be able to do things like easily create an input boolean, share it to HomeKit, and have that turn on when you get home and turn off when you leave. So that's easy presence detection for people who don't want to use the iOS app, for example. But I set up the threshold sensor actually for the first time using the UI. That's how I did it. And then suddenly I realized every time I walked into a room, even in like the middle of the day, my lights were turning on. And I was like, something's not right here. And so I set up the same sensor in YAML just to see, and it turned out that the UI version at that point, I don't quite know how, but the UI version at that point got broken, and the YAML version worked perfectly. So I switched it to YAML, and it was working perfectly. And then, of course, the next beta release is like 3 hours later, and everything's fixed again. And it's like, okay, well, I created a GitHub issue for no reason, but if it had continued, then obviously they would have had that information to track it. But so that to me was just something that was like, this is really sensible because I have different thresholds for each room because each room has a different aspect and so on. So I can tell if it's dark, and then I combine it with like the sun being down or a certain time of day. Like if it's after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m., please just consider that dark. I don't care what
All right, so are you going from so you obviously started with HomeKit and then moved into Home Assistant. Are you slowly moving away and trying to deleverage yourself from HomeKit, or are you still trying to keep HomeKit as a base for everything, and then Home Assistant is just the brains behind it? Or what's your reasoning when you come to get a new device? Are you HomeKit only, or do you prefer to try and move away from HomeKit? What's your status, I guess?
Like I wasted a lot of money buying HomeKit compatible devices because it had to be HomeKit compatible. Like if you just look at something like the Meros smart plugs and you buy the non-HomeKit compatible ones, they are way cheaper than the HomeKit compatible ones. Like there is that extra price. There is a perk, of course, you get local network control, which, as I'm sure most Home Assistant users are aware, is the thing that you want. You want things to work without the internet. Thank you very much. But nowadays, like if I'm buying something, it's, can I get this into Home Assistant somehow? Cool, great, perfect, buying that one, and then I'll figure it out later. So I recently splurged on a new robot vacuum. I got the Ecovex Dbot X1 Omni Turbo, which it has like a garage with a car wash in it. So it sucks the dust out of the vacuum. It washes the mop heads and dries them and stuff, and it's got mapping. And my requirement was, can I get this into Home Assistant? Now, I actually did make a pretty big mistake. I just checked whether or not there was an Ecovex integration, and there was, and it said it works with the robot vacuums. And I was like, great. Turns out it doesn't work with my model, but there is a Hex plugin that does. So it's all fine. I could have returned it to Amazon if there had been a problem. But honestly, I've never been so excited by dirty water. Like after it had mopped my kitchen floor, I thought my kitchen floor was clean. And then it was like, no, my kitchen floor was really not clean. Okay, good to know. You can just run every day now. Thank you very much. You can deal with this for me.
Is that a local control integration, or is it?
I believe that is actually, unfortunately, using the cloud. That said, I have been playing with Charles Proxy and stuff to see if I can figure out local network control, and I may be able to do that. I'm upgrading my network right now to Ubiquiti, so I will be able to set up like full firewall controls and like redirect things to local like devices or installs of something if I want or need to, which should be pretty cool. But going back to the original question, my plan, like my aim is get everything into Home Assistant. If I want to be able to like talk to it or like control it manually, then I'll share it back into HomeKit. But other than that, it just lives in Home Assistant, and I'm very happy having everything in Home Assistant. And I share back the things like my locks. So like I can then talk to my Apple Watch and say, hey, open this lock or open that lock. Or I've recently set up a garage. I don't have a garage. I live in an apartment. There is no garage, but the garage is essentially to try and get my front door into CarPlay. So when I get home, I can tap the button to open the garage, get out the car, and just walk into the house without you know, without having to talk to my watch separately or anything.
That's interesting. So to unlock a door through the CarPlay, you have to use a garage device. Interesting.
Yeah.
That does make
It's not-
sense, just because
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
otherwise it won't, because it's registered as a lock, right? So you normally would need a code or something of that sort to have it open. So essentially, you have a hack around it, right? It's essentially
Yeah. So I actually have it calls a script which actually waits a minute and then unlocks the doors, just because that gives me time to get out the car and grab my bag and everything else and walk over from my parking place to the door. But yeah, it's one of those things that's just, I did not realize that I could do that until I was just browsing around on the Home Assistant docs and went, I could create a garage. Why has this not occurred to me before? That I could, like, I don't have to have a garage with a garage door opener. I can just make one. And you know, it's kind of like the generic thermostat or the generic humidistat. Like, you just combine devices and put them together, and tell HomeKit it's whatever you want it to be. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things of Home Assistant.
It's funny, at some point I'd actually done the exact opposite, where my not exact opposite, but my garage door was essentially a switch, right? Because at the time, I think the Amazon Echoes didn't properly have an integration for covers.
Right.
And or I forget exactly what it was. Maybe you needed a pin. There's a couple of things.
You couldn't open them or close them or something? Like they had a restriction?
Yeah, like you couldn't open it or something like that. So essentially I made a switch with an automation to say, hey, go like, so I have to say turn on the garage door rather than open it. But you know, it's just something that I got used to saying, and then turn off or close it. But same thing, right? It's like sometimes you got to work within, you know, whatever parameters. It's a little odd, but if it works, it works.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that's one of the things where maybe you don't take the most direct route, but you take a route that gets you where you want to go. And the important part is remembering what the problem is that you want to solve, not necessarily how you're planning on solving it.
So how did you basically get in here? Like what got you to this point? What was the original problem you were trying to solve? Let's start with that.
I'm blaming me using Home Assistant partially on Yale for my locks and partially on Phil, because he created a blog post which I followed heavily and use all the time for dishwasher and washing machine notifications. And I have extended that as well to my tumble dryer, because I have a tumble dryer here in the UK. They just all use the same plug. And so the Yale locks, I couldn't get them into HomeKit through Yale directly. I think Command 4 have got an option where I could have done that, but it's pretty pricey. And the ZWave modules were like £30. And I was able to get a ZWave stick really cheaply on eBay. I think I got it for £30 or something, because the guy had bought it and it was one that had to be plugged into an extension rather than could be plugged in directly. And I thought, like, I don't want it like right next to the machine. I want to put the actual dongle somewhere that makes sense anyway.
Sure.
So thanks, I'll take the discount. And
Absolutely.
so that started, you know, some things, and I was like, okay, cool, well, that was easy. And I set up my locks. I used ZWave JS. Fortunately, I didn't use the original ZWave and have to migrate, but I understand that the documentation on that was pretty good, so there shouldn't have been a problem for most people. But so I did that, and then I had been trying, so I'd actually found Phil's post quite a bit earlier, and I had been trying using Eve energy monitors and HomeKit to monitor the power usage of my tumble dryer and dishwasher. But the tumble dryer in particular kept tripping the Eve energy switch, and I'd have to like go in there and like press the button on it to fix it or something. And that just didn't feel good. And then in the Home Assistant forum, I read somebody was using, I think it was a TP-Link HS110 smart plugs with energy monitoring in the UK for their washing machine and their tumble dryer. And I thought, well, if these people are using this, then that's a pretty good sign. And I think they've got 16 amp fuses in, which is pretty good. So I got those and picked them up off eBay. I haven't updated them because, of course, TP-Link have pulled all their local controls, which is not great. But and so I did that, followed Phil's guide, and went, this is actually pretty cool. what else can I do? So thanks, Phil. It's your fault that I'm here, but I appreciate it.
You're welcome. How's just how's your HS 110s going? Are they still running? Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I got 3 of them in the end. I picked them up off of eBay. So I have one on my washing machine, one on my tumble dryer, and one on my 3D printer. And they work really well. I've had no problems with them. And this is one of the great things about Home Assistant. I don't share those into HomeKit. So if I accidentally say, hey, Apple lady, turn everything off, she's not going to turn off my washing machine or my tumble dryer or 3D printer mid-cycle, because that's the last thing you want happening, right? Especially a washing machine mid-cycle. That could be difficult to recover from.
I have one like TP-Link smart switch on my dishwasher. And maybe like in the past, I don't know, 3 months, it's just stops, like randomly disconnects from the Wi-Fi. Of course, it's blocked from Wi-Fi. Can't get any firmware updates. So now I'm looking for another energy monitoring replacement smart switch for that. So
interesting.
Well, if I had to do something different, I'd probably go with a Zigbee one, just because there are so many more Zigbee options out there. And of course, then I don't have to, worry about somebody killing local access, because you can't kill local access with Zigbee, because how else are you going to be able to talk to it? Which is pretty good.
It's so strange. I've got some ZWave ones, and it depends on like the brand of the ZWave one, right? Like sometimes they'll do energy monitoring this way, other times I'll do it that way. And Zigbee, I don't know, down here in Australia, it's really hard to find like a smart switch that can do energy monitoring as good as like a ZWave smart switch can. So it's annoying.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to go Wi-Fi. Want to avoid that as much as I can.
Yeah. I think I'm at that point too, where it's like, do I really want to do Wi-Fi anymore? Let's just move everything off of it, whatever, right? So, Rose, do you prefer? Do you have a preference of Zigbee or Z-Wave or Z-Wave, however you want to say it? And or how do you delineate between, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to look for a Zigbee version of this or something.
Like I think my default generally is just Zigbee. Just Z-Wave tends to be a lot pricier. Obviously, it has perks in that it's very tightly controlled as to how devices communicate and so on. So there's less open to interpretation ness from manufacturers and so on, which, as we all know, Zigbee devices, occasionally you'll get one and it'll report something, and it'll be like, it'll turn up and it'll be say, hey, I'm a light bulb, and you're like, no, you're a smart plug, what are you, like, what's going on here?
Go home, you're drunk.
Very drunk. And then one of the other devices will be, hold my beer, I can do that. It's like, no, stop, this is not a game. Stop being silly. But honestly, I stick with Zigbee just because it's a lot cheaper and there's a lot of options out there. I have quite a few sets of SwitchBot curtain controllers, and they do two. They do sort of like the ones that pop in the rail, and they do the ones that clamp over the rail. And so I bought those because I wanted curtains to open and close automatically. I already had IKEA blinds, which of course is Zigbee. And oh my god, I hate Bluetooth so much. Thread obviously is going to be better, but I guess it's the way that this building is constructed, because I'm sitting in my office right now, and my office can't be more than like 5 meters from the router, but my Wi-Fi connection here is terrible unless I have a secondary access point, and that seems to also affect Bluetooth as well. Zigbee, I'm not having that problem because I've just got all the Zigbee devices everywhere, and they've built a beautiful mesh, and that just solves that problem. So I will be avoiding those, and the Bluetooth devices I'm going to have to dive into ESP Home. I have some ESPs ready to flash with firmware so that I can try that out. But generally, I'm going to be looking at Zigbee just because it's cheaper. There's so many options. And honestly, Aqara seems to be doing a really great job. I just got some Aqara curtain bots to replace some SwitchBot ones in the living room because my curtains were too heavy. And they are really good, like really, really good. I'm really impressed with them.
Are they Zigbee as well, or are they Wi-Fi?
Yes. Yeah, they're Zigbee ones, which is really great. They work really well.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I've actually got some like semi-smart blind motors for the blinds around my house recently, and they've been fantastic. And they're Zigbee as well, so local control. But I think there is a project at some point to put blinds in a room, and if I can find a replacement for those, that'd be brilliant. So I'll have to put them on my list.
Aqara have got like the I think it's called a roller shade driver, which you can put like a chain into. It doesn't technically work with a cord. I have found, however, if you wrap a rubber band around like the circular driver part, then it works brilliantly with a cord. I've had no problems with that. So I've got two, because I've got vertical blinds that open and close horizontally, and then they also tilt. And of course it's the tilt that uses the chain, and the other one uses a cord. So I've got that, and then I've got like their curtain motors which sit on the rail and pull curtains open and closed in that room as well. So I have 3 controllers for window shades in that room, but it works. So and it's all Zigbee, and I'll take it.
I find that window controllers or like blind motors, whatever you want to call them, like for what they are very expensive. Right, for just the fact that it's typically a motor and a battery, right? And so hopefully the Aqara ones are a little better, but I know a lot of the ones that I was looking at, and even there's a few chats I've had in just different like rooms and stuff where people are like, yeah, I'm looking at this, blah blah blah, and you click it, and it's like, okay, you're looking at $150, $180 per blind. Right. Times like, so in my front office, which is where I am, I've got 3 blinds right next to me. Right. And I was like, all right, that's a lot of money. Right. And especially when you're looking like Venetian blind style. So you've got the twist stick thing, and you've got a cord. Right. And it starts to get very pricey. Right. And you're just like, oh, okay, I'll just use my hands. And pull, so.
And especially curtains, if you have a set of curtains that close in the middle and open to the sides, that's 2 controllers, that's not 1 controller. And there are some people doing some great things with 3D printers and motors and like an ESP or some kind of Zigbee module and stuff, and that's great, but that means that you need to have a makerspace nearby or a 3D printer. And at that point, well, a 3D printer is more of like it's not just a printer, it's a hobby with which you set up and maintain your printer, which can produce other things which are part of your other hobby, which is home automation. It's great if you've got like a light bulb where like the only light bulb you can get is like a candle one. It sticks out the top, you can replace like the housing on it. I did that for my parents recently, but then like, I have a 3D printer, and I've had to buy one if I wanted to do it otherwise, which is just not great.
Yeah. Well, and the challenge with that too is like part 2 of that is, how do you make that, like, if it's going to be exposed, how do you make it look good, right? And that's the other challenge, right? And don't get me wrong, there's some people out there that have 3D printer designs that are just gorgeous, but I know for a fact that I'm not one of those people. So it's you're gonna have a box stuck in the side of my window somewhere, right? And well, that too.
Your print quality's got to be great, and you're going to have the filament in the right color and everything, and not have a print failure in the middle of it. And like the problem is, like, you have to build the whole device. At that point, you're essentially becoming a mini hardware manufacturer and a software developer, because you use an ESP, you're going to have to make sure that ESP is flashed with whatever is right. And if you get it wrong, that's up to you, and you're going to have to figure out how to fix it. And it's a lot of work. And blind controllers are pretty expensive. Fortunately, Prime Day is coming up, so I'm hoping that the Aqara stuff is going to be going on sale there, because it often does. But honestly, I usually get my Aqara stuff on AliExpress because it's a lot cheaper, and a lot of the sellers have got 10-day shipping anyway.
Nice. Yeah, anything to Canada from AliExpress, typically I find is like you're looking at about a month and a half to get here. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm fortunate living in the UK.
Yeah, that is that. You're kind of in the middle of everything, right? So people got to pass by you anyways. So which is great.
May as well drop it off on the way. Just chuck it out the plane window.
That's it.
Little parachute on it.
That's right. Just push it out and off you go. That's right. Yeah. Stick a picture of your face on it, and stick your name on it, and be like, "This is for Rose. Go."
Yeah. Somebody will figure it out.
That's right. So where are you now in this home automation journey? Like, are you comfortable? Are you like, you're like, okay, I've got a couple of things to go, or is it like, are you at the point where you're like, I got to refactor everything and redo everything, or?
I feel like I'm pretty far along from where I want to be, you know, I've got it set up with room occupancy. So my setup is pretty good at figuring out what room I'm in right now. And so it's currently saying my office, which is great. So it's good, you know, if any lights were on in other rooms, for me, it's, you know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there shouldn't be. But if lights were on in other rooms, they turn off and stuff. And then if I go sit in the living room and I'm there for a couple of minutes, it'll be like, okay, well, I'll turn off the lights in the office and stuff. That's pretty great.
Right.
But I'm at the point where I'm continually finding new things to do, and also there are some things I just want to improve. So one of these, and this has come up especially recently because of the upgrade to Python 3.10 with Home Assistant, is the MeFlora integration. Of course, the Bluetooth things aren't working, and so this is like, well, I've had these, and I've been looking at, like, I've just got an iOS app called Wallflower that I've just been like opening on my phone and going, okay, well, I need to deal with this in this room and so on. But this, I think, is going to push me to, because I wasn't going to get the Bluetooth from the kitchen in here anyway. I was going to have to do something to figure that out. So I think it's going to push me into ESP Home and figuring out that sort of thing, because there's just so many other great things that I can do. And it will allow me to have local control over my switchbot curtains, which are also Bluetooth, and I could use via Bluetooth, but I'm currently using the API via REST commands and sensors and stuff, which it works, but if I've not got internet for some reason, then none of it works. And that's just frustrating and annoying. So I think ESP Home is definitely going to be like a big next step for me. And also like figuring out scheduling stuff. So like my robot vacuum, like getting it to clean the house automatically, but it knows I'm going out later, so it's not going to do it during the day while I'm here. It will wait until I've left and then clean. Or it knows I'm not going out today, so it's going to clean everywhere except like half the hallway and my office because I'm working. And then later when I finish working, it'll come in and just clean those areas or something like that. That's something I'd really like to figure out. I have no idea where to get started on that yet, but there's calendar stuff now, which is great. So
I was gonna say there's a lot of like Google Calendar integrations or whatever, right? So that might be a really cool start to say, hey, you know what, at this point I'm not home, so go do your thing, right? Or I am and don't. So
we had someone earlier on this year that wanted to do like to tell the vacuum cleaner which room to clean. So by the night, he would have like NFC tags around in every room. So he would go, okay, this room's good, tap it with his phone. And then once everyone had left, it would go, okay, which NFC tags were scanned? Go and clean those rooms. And only those rooms.
Yeah. I think I'm going to end up working on a default opt-in rather than an opt-out. Because I think my assumption I would like to be that every room is good for cleaning, and then you know, take out the things that I shouldn't be cleaning for whatever reason. Because, for example, you know, if I'm in my office and I'm working, the vacuum is just distracting. But if I'm in a meeting, then it's actually like, well, actually the whole house should be excluded, just because it will be distracting and it might come through, you know, while I'm talking to other people. Like, I don't think they'll care. It's just more like it's bothering me that I can hear it and it's distracting me, and they'll also be hearing it and potentially being distracted themselves. Which, you know, so I need to figure that out. But there's a lot of great stuff in the forum. It's not that noisy, no. It's just that I get distracted very easily. It's always like, oh, shiny things. What is this doing? Like, oh, look, isn't it cute? You know, as I said, I've never been
it's like
so
when the
excited
blinds
by
in my
dirty
house
water.
go up and down. Oh, gotta watch the blinds, all right?
Yeah.
It's funny, especially you got that honeymoon phase, right? Of like, oh, I just got this device, it's so cool, look at it go, and like whatever, and then after a year you're like kicking it, but like, all right, go, like what are you doing? So
yeah, exactly. Like, to me, I now walk into a room and I just expect the lights to turn on automatically if I consider it dark. And I had to go do something in my parents' place while they were away a while ago, and I walked into the kitchen and I was like, why is it dark in here? And I was like, oh, right, this is not my house, that's why it's dark in here. I have to go use a light switch like a person. Like, oh my gosh, how do I live like this? It was fine. And then I forgot to turn off the light when leaving, so I had to go back and turn off the light, and it's fine. I figured it out in the end. It was just one of those things that, like, I didn't realize until that moment how little I think about so many of these automations that I have set up now, because they just work. And it's really cool when you get to that point where you're in the flow of it just works, and then you find other things that bug you. And so, you know, break everything and cause yourself lots of angst trying to solve that problem, perhaps by over engineering it, and then you end up with a really cool solution.
So random question for all of you. How are you tracking the ideas you want to do for home automation? Like if you're sitting on the couch and you're like, damn, that's a really cool idea. Where does it go? Do you just hope to remember it when you wake up in the morning? Do you have a list in your iPhone somewhere that you're writing it down? Like where's everyone writing these things?
For me, my solution to this is usually I'll just do it now, which is maybe not the best idea because it sometimes leads to some very late nights. But usually it's I'll just do it now. For anything where I can look at it and go, oh, actually, I think like this is going to take a bit longer, like the ESP home things. I have a project in OmniFocus, the task manager that I use, of just like home assistant stuff to do, and it's got things in there like the MeFlora Bluetooth scanner from ESP Home is in there, a DVOOM integration, which is like it's LED board display, like a grid pattern one which you can light up with different things. I'd like to do something with that as well. I've got 2 of those, and so I've got all sorts in there, and some stuff I'm sure is just somebody posted this in the Home Assistant Discord, and I may never do it, but I saw it and went, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll just give it a go. But it's usually, if it's small, I'll just do it now. If it's bigger, then I'll write in my project list and hopefully come back to it in not too distant future.
I'll tell you this: the ESP Home MeFlora piece is actually stupid easy. Like it is. You literally just fill out the YAML with like the couple of things you need and just say, hey, here's my wireless, and the rest of it just works. It's actually kind of magical.
The only reason I haven't done it yet is because I'm just about to switch Wi-Fi networks from Eero to Ubiquiti, and also I'm not 100% certain which of my plant sensors are where. I need to like take one for a walk and check that MAC address follows me, and then like repeat with the other ones just to make sure that I've actually got the right ones assigned to the right plants, because I don't think that my orchid is actually an orchid right now. I think it's the peace lily, and I would like to get that set up correctly.
Yeah, when I did that, what I found helped is I just brought all of them over, and essentially so I just had it all on my table, remove the battery off of all of them, and then just pop one in, and then you see a discovery in ESP Home. You're like, okay, so ABC 1 2 3, that's the palm, or like whatever, right? And you do it that way. So it's actually a lot less involved than you realize it is. It sounds like it's pretty like involved. It's really not. Like it's pretty good.
No, I just need to actually do it and move and get up and pick up the sensors and actually do that. Possibly this is, label makers are honestly one of the greatest inventions when it comes to home automation, because I have labeled all of the things. So if I take off like my switchbox curtains for charging, then I don't accidentally put the left up where the right should have been, and vice versa. So I'll just, do that, label them so I know which one is which, and then that should be it, hopefully.
Yeah, at one point I did the same with the MeFlora sensor. So I just put labels inside. Because otherwise they're kind of ugly if it's, or I guess you could put it back behind it, whatever. But like I put it inside the tab, so it's a thing. But then they all started falling out, and it was just like, all right, cool, that didn't work. But if you have a good solution, or I guess if you put it outside, and that's it too, right?
Yeah, Sharpie on the inside of it, just write in a Sharpie on the inside. That's not a bad idea, actually. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Sometimes the best solution is just Sharpie.
I don't disagree there. Yeah. Or do whatever. No, kidding. Don't do that. From my side, it's usually just I end up putting it up here and leaving it in my head and forget about it. But a lot of times I also have the way of mentioning it on the podcast, and then Phil grills me about it once every 2 weeks. So there's that.
I'm your reminder.
That's right. But other than that, I actually at one point set up a whole like Jira, like just so I can say, hey, here's track my issues and whatever. And then that just got annoying, and I was just like, I just don't do this anymore. Currently I just have like a little Notion I don't know, page open with like, hey, I should do this. So that's where I'm at right now. But
I was going to say, like, since you got me onto Notion, like that's where I used to use OneNote because I was, paying for Microsoft Office, may as well dump everything in there. So then, I put everything, like I think you got me onto Notion. I've started like trying to put some form of database list around it, put it into rooms and
Mm-hmm.
tag it with this and that. But yeah, I think I've got a mishmash. Sometimes I'll have WhatsApp messages to my wife. Oh, this would be cool to automate, like, and then I can never find it again, right? So, yeah, I think that's the challenge I need to solve, like just how I can document my smart home a little bit better.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's certainly a challenge, when something starts turning the lights on and off, and you go to the logbook and it just says lights turned on. You're like, okay, what did I do? Like, what integration did I recently install that is causing my lights to seemingly randomly turn on? My recent culprit was I installed adaptive lighting, which is such a great integration, and I just didn't configure it. I just put like the key in the config file.
Oh, no.
Such a mistake, because it then started turning on all my lights automatically. It was like, okay, cool idea. Maybe I should have actually read the guide first instead of just going, I'll throw the key in. Like, how bad can this be? It turned all my lights on
pretty
for
bad,
like
apparently.
a day and a half until I realized what it was. And then I figured it out, but still, it was an interesting day and a half.
That's funny.
So what are you using for presence detection in Home Assistant? It's one of our go-to questions we have to ask all our guests. Usually everyone has a unique way to do it. I'm assuming for you there must be some HomeKit/iOS involved, but what's your unique take on it? How do you manage presence?
I mean, honestly, I just use the Home Assistant app because it's just me. So, for me, it's very easy.
Mm-hmm.
I only have one person to track. But what I will be doing, I'm going to be giving my parents the gift of Home Assistant in the not too distant future. They have asked for smart doorbell and some cameras and stuff. And I was like, okay, they don't want subscriptions, so they're going to be doing that. So for them, instead, I'm going to be exposing an input boolean to HomeKit and have it turn on automatically when they arrive home and turn off when they leave, with just a HomeKit automation that's specifically for when I arrive and when I leave, rather than anyone arrives and everyone leaves.
Right.
And I think that is going to be the easiest way to solve that. I could give them direct access to Home Assistant, but I honestly think I'm probably not going to do that for quite a while. It's just going to be share everything to HomeKit and they'll have it in a HomeKit and then they can't break anything. Because, it's my parents. Like, my mom continually manages to turn off various settings on her iPad and then says, why isn't this working? It's like, well, you turned it off. That's why it's not working. So letting them loose with Home Assistant straight off the bat seems like a bad idea. I'll be just doing the input boolean with HomeKit trick for now, I think, for them, because network detection, their Wi-Fi is pretty terrible. So yeah, I'm not going to try that. I'll just stick with HomeKit.
That's funny.
So that's interesting. So if you were to just do an input boolean with HomeKit, would you need the Home Assistant app installed then? Like, could you do it without having a Home Assistant installed?
Yeah, because when you get home, because you share that input boolean, it'll just turn the input boolean on, and then I guess I'll add that to the person in Home Assistant, and then know that is that person being at home, or I might have to do a template sensor or something. I haven't quite looked that far ahead yet. I figure it won't take me that long to figure out when I get there. But yeah, that my plan is just share an input boolean, have it turn on and off, and it'll be able to be manually turned on and off as well. There's not a lot I can do about that, but I don't think that's going to be a problem, for just knowing that people are there or not.
Can you hide it in HomeKit? Again, this is my lack of HomeKit knowledge, but like, can you have it and just have it hidden?
The best thing that you can do in HomeKit is like not have it as a favorite and then put it in a room called "Do not touch this or I will kill you" or something like that. The latter part of that name possibly being optional depending on how good or bad your family and friends are at following instructions. So you can't completely hide it, unfortunately, but if it's not in favorites, and it's put in a separate room, then it's probably not going to get seen and played with. So it's not perfect, but I don't think that there's any such thing as a perfect solution. It's just whether or not it works. And I'm pretty certain that's going to be a very lightweight way to make sure that it works. My parents don't want a smart alarm system or anything. They just want, like temperature sensors and some cameras and a doorbell. So thanks to Frank and his blog post on the $2 doorbell, I'm going to be giving that a shot with some ESP Home as well.
Nice.
I'm just adding whether or not they're there more as a curiosity to myself because it may be useful later, rather than it's a requirement at the moment.
Rohan, were you running an instance of Home Assistant up at your parents' house at some point, or were you running like a server?
I had a server. It's more just for my like labbing out stuff. Not Home Assistant, but my parents do. My dad's very dangerous in the sense that he likes technology, but he doesn't always understand it.
Yeah.
So he'll go off to like wherever, Costco or something like that, and go buy like, I don't know, $100 or a couple $100 worth of just like smart switches or this or that. And he's like, hey, I want to do this. And I have no idea how. So you need to come do this for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. which fine to some extent. I was like, all right. But that, and then the constant upkeep of that is just like, so I basically went in and just normalized everything because they use Google Home at home. So I just kind of brought it all into Google Home and be like, hey, it's all here. If it stops working, don't call me. So, yeah. But that's essentially what you're going to have to go
familiar.
through, Rose. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, no. My parents. This is for. They have a place in France. And so for their place in the UK, I've just used HomeKit so far, and they had an issue a while ago. Their car temperature sensor stopped working, so I asked them to unplug the Akara hub and plug it back in again, please. They unplugged the IKEA hub and plugged it back in again. So I now have some smart USB switches. I think they're Sonoff Ulinks USB switches, so that if they message me that, hey, this thing isn't working, I can reboot the correct hub rather than unplugging and plugging back in the wrong hub, which of course did exactly nothing except cause them to message me and say, the blinds aren't working. Oh, they're working again now. It's like, okay, well done. You've unplugged the wrong thing and plugged it back in. So yeah, that was not surprising that didn't work.
Yeah. But that's it, right? It's like, it's a lot of like labels. It's a lot of like just that kind of stuff to be like, okay, here's what you're going to do, right? And find the pink one, go to the blue one. Like, so it's, that's kind of the logic. At least that's my logic with my parents, right? So it's
my plan of using Home Assistant is basically just because they will inevitably, like they told me, so they actually told me they wanted a video doorbell, and then it turned out that they didn't want the doorbell, they actually just wanted the camera. Unfortunately, I'll be able to do that with just a cheap Reolink Power over Ethernet camera. And I'm still going to do Frank's doorbell because I'm curious, why not? Like, it's an opportunity. I'm taking a week off work, I'll go have some fun. But like they told me that they wanted a doorbell, which it turned out was a camera, and they want temperature sensors, which thus far are still temperature sensors. I'm pleased to report they've not suddenly turned into vibration or flood sensors. I don't think my Akara stuff will morph quite that easily. The door sensors could become a flood sensor. Either way, but inevitably they will want something else. It's going to happen. It's just a question of when do they want it. And they very much don't want subscriptions and so on. It's just sort of peace of mind. They'd like sort of time-lapse pictures of, like what's going on with the land and everything. They've got a little orchard with some cider apple trees in there, and it's just nice seeing what happens. So, it's they just want something cheap and simple. And honestly, Home Assistant does have the maintenance requirement, but once it's set up and running, there's not really a lot to do. I'll set it up and just remote into it, once a month or so, a couple of weeks after the new release drops, after I've already gone through the beta process and just update it and make sure that it's continuing to work, and it should be fine. So I don't anticipate any problems there that can't be overcome. It's just one of those things where it's, I think, probably actually the best option, even if they won't know that they're running Home Assistant.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What would you do to remotely connect into their instance? Like, would you get like a Nabu subscription? Because that kind of goes back into their subscription bit.
Yeah. So I would use a Nabu subscription for them, but like it just ends up being a lot of those ongoing costs. Instead, I bought them a domain name because it's $10 a year, and I'll just use Cloudflare and setting all of that up. I've done it for myself because I could, and I should probably just switch to Nabu Casa just to avoid any problems on my own system. But my parents have already been made very aware that they have a satellite internet connection that can't do everything. If stuff goes down for a while, it goes down for a while. There's not a lot we can do other than hope for the best. So I think it'll be all right.
So part I guess too that kind of I just thought of is like, so how are you accounting for that from an experience perspective, right? So from a like in your design brain, like what are you doing to say, okay, well, you know, do I use switches instead of light bulbs? Because if they can't connect their app, whatever, fine, that might be an issue.
Yeah,
Or like,
yeah.
are there things like that you're considering, and what are they?
I mean, because right now they basically they want input rather than output. They want cameras, they want some temperature sensors and stuff. There's nothing to worry about with that. But when it comes to the inevitable, they would like some smart light bulbs or something. I will probably grab some of the IKEA trad-free ones and the buttons, and just bind those buttons directly to the bulbs, because that way they will have local control over those devices automatically, so that it just works. Zigbee binding, honestly, is just one of the greatest parts of it. I've been trying to set up my network. I managed to do it spectacularly wrong last night and spent this morning recovering from it, so I could be talking here now. And when I woke up this morning, I was able to still press the button by the side of my bed and have it, turn on the lights and open the blind as it usually does, because I've done the binding with Zigbee for that to happen. And so that made it much less painful than it could have been. It was still very annoying that my curtains then didn't automatically open because my internet was down, but that's on me, and I'm willing to live with that. I'm willing to live with a higher pain threshold than I will allow for my parents, because this is me. I've set it up. If I break it, I can live with it.
Sure.
If I break it for them, I'm gonna get an earful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's
so interesting. Why did you go, or why have you chosen to go smart bulbs over switches? Is there any reasoning for that?
Color, temperature. So I have some color bulbs. I have some just white temperature bulbs. And then brightness and dimming for me are big ones. So for example, if I'm in my living room and it's dark and I start watching TV, then it will dim the light bulbs automatically for me while media is playing. And then when I pause or it finishes, then it will bring the brightness back up. So it means that I'll still be able to, see for anything that I want to do, but it's not going to be really bright, which is, especially if I'm watching a film or something, is quite cool, because I've got the Philips TV with it. It's not the gradient strip, it's the one that's actually got the lights built into the back, so that provides some extra ambient lighting as well, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, those are pretty neat.
Yeah, my TV died like a year ago, and I was looking and I realized that getting the Philips one with the lights built into the back wasn't that much more. It was like £50 more than just the same size without that. So I was like, well, obviously I'm getting this then. So yeah.
And it works really well. It's one of those, I guess it's the Ambilight ones or whatever.
Yeah, it's an Ambilight TV. Yeah. I really like it. I think I used a Hex plugin to get it into Home Assistant, but honestly, I don't actually use it through Home Assistant at all, because it just comes on when the TV goes on and it goes off when the TV goes off. Like I control the TV through the Harmony Hub and some Home Assistant to an extent, but I don't really mess with the gradient lighting, just because it doesn't feel like there's a need to. But it's a pretty cool option.
How does Home Assistant know when you're watching something on TV? Like, are you using like Plex or something for it to know, or is there another way?
Yeah. So I've got a combination of things set up with a perhaps overly complex template sensor for this. So the TV itself turning on, that's detected through the Harmony Hub, and that will close the blinds in the living room so that there's no glare on the TV or light shining in my eyes, which is definitely part one. And then the other part is a combination of Plex and my Apple TV, which has a state of meteors playing. Or something like that. So if it's Plex, obviously it's very easy to detect because Plex has sensors built in, simple. But other than that, if I'm watching something through like Amazon Prime or something like that, then the Apple TV will still report that it's playing, and then I can use that to detect that media is playing, which is cool. I've yet to do anything really like properly with my Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo Wii that I picked up in lockdown, because gotta be retro sometimes. But I figure I'll like at the moment, whenever the Harmony goes into those modes, it'll just dim the lights immediately. And so, when I play with those more, then I might do something better with that. But that said, the Wii, I probably ought to leave the lights on full, just because otherwise I'm going to be like tripping over stuff and like flying everywhere. And that would, like, actually flying would be cool. Flying over my footstool into my television, not so cool.
Not so cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I've got an LG WebOS smart TV, and like Plex is fine, right? You get the sensors for that. As soon as you hit the play button, it sensor changes playing. But when you go into something like Netflix or any other app, right, the playing state doesn't change. Like, so you could start playing something on Netflix. It doesn't say it's playing. It just says it's playing this app. So I've just got an Amazon Fire TV. I'm hoping that might, have a bit more granular data for that, because that's the ultimate goal, right? Like if I was to go into something, turn it on to Netflix, and the lights just know, right, the TV's actually playing, as opposed to just sitting on an idle state, because that's obviously a very different scenario there.
Yeah.
So
that must be very frustrating. One of the things I realized recently, which hadn't occurred to me, is my TV is an Android TV. And somebody in the Home Assistant Discord was posting about how they were trying to get their notifications set up. And I was like, hang on a minute, can I do that? And it turns out I can have notifications on my TV even when it's not like in TV mode. It's using one of the HDMI ports and it pops up. So it now tells me like my air fryer is finished, or the washing machine's finished, or a tumble dryer is finished. But like, I think that's one of the very few perks of Android TV. I've yet to find another perk of Android TV. It just seems that it means that they're all sufficiently different. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of commonality, but perhaps it's still a step up over the LG WebOS TVs. I have to say, I didn't consider the operating system of my TV.
When I was getting my TV, I was like, that's it. I need to go through the Home Assistant, compatibility list, and LG was on there. And one of the selling features for me was the notifications. Because LG does the same thing, right? And you have a little icon in the corner, dishwasher is done. Like, perfect. No one ever listens to it. The dishwasher will stay stacked for too long, but that's on us, not Home Assistant, unfortunately.
It's the human failure.
The Samsung frame is kind of the same, right? Where it's like that's the one we have as our primary TV, and it's like there's not a whole lot you can do in terms of, because they use their own, like, I don't know, variant called Tizen or Tizen or something like that, and it's just not like there's Hacks plugins and stuff like that, and I think there's a native one too. I think the Hacks one I have worked a little bit better, but it's still kind of like it's not perfect, right? There's no, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Have you tried using your Samsung frame as a dashboard? Because I've been considering getting one for my bedroom. I have like a picture in my bedroom, which is about the size of the smallest Samsung frame TV. I don't anticipate doing a lot of TV watching in my bedroom, but it would be really cool when I wake up in the morning for it to like show me an up-to-date dashboard of like what's going on with the world and things like that, which, that's very, like, to me, that's really interesting. And I know that you can send screenshots to it and have it display those. And there are people that have done that with Home Assistant, but I've yet to pull the trigger. But I'm curious if you tried doing something like that.
I haven't, but I have considered. There's the new Amazon Echoes that kind of are like frame-esque, right? I don't know what they're called, but where essentially they kind of flush mount to the wall kind of thing. And I've thought about doing it with that because you can pull up a web browser, right, on like the Echo Show and stuff like that. I assume you can on this one too. I haven't played with it. I don't have one, but I have thought of doing something like that. I don't. It's one of those things where I'm like, how much do I actually care to do that? Because it's like at that point, I may just like grab an iPad or something and stick that on the wall. It just might be easier to use than to set up all the stuff, right?
About one of those Netgear Mural Canvas things, like the digital photo frames that I think you can point like a URL of a playlist. And I think there's an integration in Home Assistant that allows you to change it or refresh the images in that. So if you could somehow upload a screenshot of whatever you want to display, then you don't need a TV in your bedroom. It would just be a screen that's a photo frame, and away it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to go with the Magic Mirror. I recently bought, relatively recently bought a WaveShare Magic Mirror bundle. So Magic Mirror, I think it's magicmirror.builders. Like the idea is that you take like a Raspberry Pi and a screen and put some two-way glass over the top. So it's a mirror with all of the like information sort of showing up in the corners, looking really smart and fancy. And I've been wanting to do that for years, ever since I first saw it on whoever it was, his website, where he built like one from scratch completely, and then, you know, turned it into like an operating system and everything, which is pretty cool. But I was never going to get around to it, and I found this Magic Mirror like bundle from WaveShare and was like, okay, well, I'm just buying that, so I should probably just look at that and set that up instead. And get all of the information into there, because I think that's probably what I really need. I just, for some reason, really like the idea of the Samsung frame. I think possibly I was ill a couple of months ago and I spent like a day or two in bed, and like I was watching stuff on my iPad and I just kind of didn't really want my iPad on the bed. So I think part of me is just like, just get a TV for the bedroom. Like the answer is you want a TV and you want a dashboard, but they don't have to be like on the same device. They could be on separate devices.
Where are you going to next? Like, so you've obviously got the parents happening with their house. Have you, what's your next automation frontier that you want to get into?
Definitely ESP Home. That is for me a big thing. I bought ESPs ready to go and like started bookmarking things to flash them with. That is just out of the box, and then of course I'll be inevitably programming my own, especially after the Let's Get Loud, I think it was called, event from Home Assistant. I'm very excited of just like getting, you know, things working via audio. I already have some Sonos speakers, but I've yet to experiment with a text-to-speech, because most of my home audio is HomePods, and I honestly don't think that's going to change. But I do have a Symphonisk frame in my hallway and a Sonos Roam, which migrates from the hallway to the bathroom and back. So I could do text-to-speech on there. That's pretty central, which is definitely up for grabs. And I honestly hadn't really thought of the Magic Mirror until we were talking just now, and then realized that I should probably be doing that as well. But yeah, other than that, like the next like separate-ish automation frontier is going to be grocery, and looking at like inventorying like food and meal planning and things like that, and tying that into Home Assistant. I have some of this set up already. So my water jug filter needs replacing every 28 days. And so Home Assistant knows when I replaced it and counts down the number of days until, you know, it should be replaced. And then I actually have that set up with a weird combination of automations and stuff at the moment. I should probably just switch to using I think there's a new input a helper for countdowns or timeouts or something like that I should probably use instead.
Yeah.
So when I replace the filter, it updates grocery and removes a filter from the inventory, and then, you know, it will get added to the list when I start running out of filters, which is quite cool. But I really want to tie that into a bunch of other things, so that I know, you know, like when the robot vacuum reports that the bin needs emptying on it, that automatically then, when the bin goes from needs emptying to does not need emptying, will say, hey, you need to buy another bag, or just, you know, decrease the amount, so that I have that. Because I think, you know, for me, automation is about removing friction from my life with things. And every so often it'll be like, why am I like going and buying food right now? Like, did I plan this week really, really badly? Or is it just that I really don't want whatever it is that I had planned, but I hadn't really written down and stuff like that? And, you know, I just want to kind of solve that sort of problem, hopefully. And yeah.
Grocery is like another level.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
So I don't know if you've seen, I've got a blog post where I did the same thing, right? I've got my dishwasher, as soon as it turns on, it will deduct that I've used a dishwashing tablet, so I know exactly how many dishwashing tablets I have in the house. Same with like the washing detergent against the washing machine. I even had at one point how many liters of milk I had in the house. I would, every time I'd have like a glass of milk or have some cereal, I'd push a button on the side of the fridge to say that, okay, I've used X amount of mils from the bottle of milk. I don't have any of that running anymore. It's just it gets way like the stuff that you can easily automate with time. You know, like, okay, every day deduct one from this or that. That's fine. But when it's the ad hoc stuff and it comes out of sync very quickly. If I was going to do it properly, I'd look at like some ESP32 weight sensors and try and do that. At least that we can measure it. But
yeah, like the Amazon Dash shelf, but like a DIY version of it.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the Dash shelf is only available in America and for like businesses, which is a shame because I love the idea of it. So I need to try and do that with ESP Home, just because then it'll know, like, hey, you're running low on Coke Zero and chocolate. Like, this is fuel for life. Go stock up or something. And everything else not so important.
That's an emergency. It should make the order for you.
Yes, yeah. If we had like DoorDash or something here, that would be pretty cool. I could do that. But as it is, I'm not going to pay Uber Eats like £10 to deliver some chocolate and cookies and Coke Zero. I'll just pick it up on my way home next time.
All right. Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to learn more about, some of the stuff you're doing, or where else can people find you?
Yeah, if people go to rosemaryorchard.com, that's got links to podcasts and things that I do all over the internet. As you've mentioned, I have some other podcasts. One is called Automators, which is automating things, iOS and macOS and web, really. There's also iOS Today, which is all about iOS and tvOS and HomePod OS devices, etc. And then, productivity wise, I have Nested Folders, the podcast. Or people can find me on Twitter or in the Home Assistant Discord, or I'm always lurking in the forums. I don't post in there much. I'm just stealing from everybody else because there's so much good stuff in there. But yeah, I'm basically all over the internet. So yeah, and it'll be great to hear from people. I know I've run into some people in the Home Assistant Discord who said that from Automators they've heard about Home Assistant and given it a try, and that's why they're there. And it's like, oh, it's really nice to hear, because this community is so supportive of each other. It's really wonderful to find more people in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a wrap. We'll leave links to all those podcasts and everything in the show notes. But Rose, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been lots of fun, and I'm going to have to continue stealing all the ideas from you two and your guests.
Excellent.
There's just so many great ones.
Please do. Have a good day. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.